how's it going, everyone? Thank you for joining me on another episode of the Music Reviewer Podcast. My name's Josh, I'm the music reviewer, and today got another album review for you guys. It will be episode 15. The name of the band is titled Bdrmm. They are a fairly new outfit from the UK that has their sort of hand in the shoegaze genre. So yeah, they're a shoegaze dream pop band from the UK. Really small band. I think this is for sure the smallest band I covered. Before we get started, I just want to let everyone know a few things new with the podcast. First of all, new logo. If you notice that, yeah, new logo. It was actually made by someone that does graphic design. So it looks tons better. Like it's completely just way out of the league of the last logo that I made. But yeah, thanks for joining me on this episode. Just want to let everyone know. Uh, Most recent episode that you can check out too if you're interested is going to be Best and Worst Track of the Week for the week of July 11th. That one was pretty interesting. And also, I have a new series that I released a couple days ago too, titled Worth a Listen. I covered the debut album, The Japanese House. If you're interested in that, go ahead and check it out. But yeah, we'll get started on this review by the band Bdrmm. So, the title of the album is self-titled, so it's Bdrmm. One interesting thing about this band is they spell bedroom wrong. They spell it Bdrmm. That's sort of a trend that a lot of bands are adopting. That's pretty much all I have to say about that. But if you're ever looking up this band, don't try looking it up by the traditional spelling of the word bedroom. Um, it is spelled without the E and the O. And I guess it was inevitable that I would be covering a shoegaze band. I'm actually surprised it took me all the way until what are we now? I believe episode 15. Yeah, this is episode 15, and yeah, I finally dug my heels into a shoegaze album. And I wasn't really expecting to do this. Bdrmm kind of just came into my scope quite recently. Recently, I've been trying to look at what's been released, what's out there for me to review for you guys, and um, I was having a little bit of difficulty. There's a lot of things that are out right now that I just have been kind of dragging my feet on getting into. I was thinking about maybe reviewing the new Haim album, and just wasn't quite ready to do that one. So I've been going on online and seeing, hey, what small bands or what outfits that of artists that I don't quite really follow, what have they released? And to my pleasant surprise, this is a shoegaze band from the UK that kind of has um, their sound very similar to the band Dive, which, if you're not familiar with Dive is another shoegaze dream pop act from the US. They're fairly successful. I've seen them live, I think once. I think once, yeah. But yeah, they put on a great show. And I guess I was a fan of their second album, Is the Izar, but their first album, Ocean, I think is probably the most critically acclaimed. I think that one, when that came out, I think it was maybe around 2012 or something like that. Indie rock was pretty prevalent, and yeah, there was a lot of buzz going around about Dive. And just to kind of put it in a nutshell, they have their brand of shoegaze that is very reliant on like these guitar lines that are like very melodic, but also just soaked in like reverb and delay. Um, they're not the most technical pieces either, but when it all comes together, they make a decent, nice wall of sound. And the sound that Dive produces usually ends up becoming pretty rich, moody, ethereal, dark. Um, they're more for the aesthetic. If you like bands like that, I would definitely recommend them. But yeah, I tried a track from Bdrmm, um, and I couldn't help but noticing that their sound was I don't want to say copy and paste, but I was like, wow, this really could have been on like their first album. When I listened to the first single I listened to was Happy on this album, which that one immediately just caught me, and it made me interested in what this album sounded like. Now, I'm just going to go in here and be quite frank. This isn't the most original album in the world. It definitely relies on borrowing from not just bands like Dive, but just the shoegaze bands that came as early as the 90s. And yeah, this is a genre that I've been quite fond of over the years. Not to insert myself too much into this. I guess during my college years, I had a bit of a shoegaze phase. I didn't listen to too much of it, but I was very interested in the genre and its history, and I probably know a little bit more than I should. But I'll just note that I've been a fan of, the My Bloody Valentine record from the '90s. Bands like Slow Dive, I've listened to um, a bit, Ride, stuff like that. And how it's just influenced a lot of rock that came after it. I think that shoegaze is something that's so influential in, I guess, paving the way for bands that came, yeah, especially in the indie rock genre in the 2000s. And then, of course, the 2010s, it kind of had a resurgence. There's bands that are very are still very strong in that sound, such as Ringo Death Star, Pity Sex when they were still around, and then of course the similarity to the Dream Pop bands like Wild Nothing, Beach Fossils, um, among numerous other ones. There's so many bands nowadays that borrow from those sounds. But nonetheless, here in 2020, we have a debut band by the band Bdrmm, a debut album by the band Bdrmm. And just a quick lowdown on who they are. They're from the UK. Originally, it was a solo project of Mr. Ryan Smith, but later expanded to a full band project. Not much information out on them, other than 2018 they released their debut single on a small label that gained some attention of a label son- titled Sonic Cathedral that actually signed them to release an EP in 2019, of which I have not listened, but maybe I'll check it out. But here we are in 2020, and we have their debut self-titled album. So to start off this album, uh, the first track is titled Momo. Um, this is uh, a track that features jingly, reverby guitars. The drums that dominate in the mix here sound possibly a little programmed. I'm not sure what's up with that, but the drum sounds and textures do change a little bit throughout the album. It's a little bit repetitive. It plays the same riff over and over. It's an intro track. It's instrumental, and it sounds quite a bit like Dive, especially when it gets to these arrivals in the music, where there's a section that will just ascend, and it has like that almost the same color that a lot of Dive music has. Um, but the next track is worth highlighting. It's probably the most. This is where the band's, I guess, talents are introduced. The track is called Push Pull. There's a lovely guitar melody here that kind of just soaks up the entire mix. The song is, again, strikingly similar to Dive. The bass tone's a little bit fuller and richer here. Back in Momo, it sounded like a little dry. And then the vocals here are haunting, and airy, um, very similar to again the band Dive's vocals. But I guess here you can kind of hear a different take on that style. Um, the obvious highlight in this track, Push Pull, is like that leading guitar melody that just arrives and comes in throughout the track. It really gives the track a haunting mood, kind of like an anxious texture. A reason to celebrate is kind of a mix up. They try more here to go for the standard shoegaze aesthetic. a 90s like quality. If I guess something more mainstream to compare to would maybe be like a Smashing Pumpkins song. It has more of like a rock sound. Composition wise, it has like this charming quality to it. The best part is where that pre-chorus to chorus march idea is happening. The drums sound a little washed out here, I'd say, but the song ends as it gets good. I'm not sure why that happened, but I guess it felt a little incomplete. Um, the song does give a brighter texture that is a little bit rare in this album. A lot of it sounds quite dark. Um, Gush, again, it we kind of revert back to this dream pop dive inspiration. It actually makes me a little bit more. It reminds me a little bit more of the band Hoops. They're another like small dream pop band from the United States. They have more of a pop flair, and this song kind of has that. I like the leading guitar riff a lot. The bass tone's a little bit better too, but it's a little bit more drowned out in the mix. I wish I could hear it a little bit more. There's more isolated parts in this track. It's less homogenous and like this like big wall of sound. I like when it goes into the instrumental interlude. It has like this lead guitar tone that gives it a nice touch. It becomes actually a little saturated towards the end, but yeah, overall, I thought that was an interesting track. The next track is actually the first Bdrmm song I ever heard, Happy. It features like this main lead bass riff. Um, Again, very similar to the the band Dive. It sounds straight from their debut album, honestly. But I like how that bass riff kind of structures and guides the song. The track does have a bit of like mechanical nature with all this reverb utilization. Um, it does develop nicely though. It into like this instrumental interlude. The drum performance on this track is really solid. I like that as well. But yeah, that's kind of a common feature that happens in this album is where it has like a standard song structure. Will be like verse, chorus, and then verse again, and then the song will maybe develop into like this instrumental build up and interlude that kind of ends the song. The next track is pretty interesting too. The silence, it's definitely the most ambient thing on here. It really doesn't sound like anything else on the album. Um, it's kind of like a relaxation after the song Happy. This track kind of relaxes all that tension from the previous track. It has like these chant like vocals that are a little indistinguishable. Um, an underlying synth tone that kind of gives everything a foundation, a trance-like texture. It's lucid, it's dreamy. It's like this slow drum beat kind of makes it, sound like you're tripping out or something. That kind of thing, etherealness. Um, Next thing that kind of caught my attention, I'll skip over a track. The track If. This one has a cool soundscape. It has like this clean chorus bass intro, I think. Has like a really nice texture. And this track is important because there's a huge sound that just comes in when the band kicks in with these overdrive guitars. It's definitely the loudest part on this album. Um, Again, very similar to like that 90s shoegaze sound with these overdrive guitars. This it features the best bass tone I heard on this whole entire thing, like that classic rattly Ampeg sound. It has like this ghostly, hollow texture in the verses. The guitar melodies are really prominent. It works for the track. Outro has like a melodic synth bass line too. It does like this thing where the synth line and the bass are playing together, and it's probably one of the better tracks on this album. The track after that is quite interesting as well. Is that what you wanted to hear? Really haunting, dark texture to it. It's ethereal. The main guitar melody accentuates that. There's some haunting vocals on here. It has a second guitar part playing a similar accompanying part with like a thinner tone. So kind of just like a lot of like similar things being played. The bass gives a lot of momentum on this track, a lot of momentum and energy. Um, the second verse has like a developed part where it's more textured. It has like these eerie embellishments. And the outro holds like this quirky sci-fi sounding like effect. Um, and I think that was like a nice track overall as well. I won't. The next track is the last track. Forget the credits. This one is probably more of the one of the more low key skeletal tracks on this album. I won't get too much into it. It wasn't, I guess, something that caught my attention in the overall grand scheme of things. But overall, I did enjoy this album. I'd give it like a 6 out of 10. Maybe if it just reminded me way too much of Dive, and it kind of, the reason why I enjoyed it maybe is because personally, um, maybe I needed another Dive album in my life, even though they didn't release one that long ago. But this kind of made me feel a little nostalgic with how similar that sound was to their first album. Um, but yeah, it hopefully this band um, sticks around and we can hear them develop. I'm always in the mood to listen to some shoegaze. Yeah, not much else to say though. Not a bad album. Check it out if you're fond of a lot of these bands I've mentioned throughout the review. If you're a fan of rock music, you might like this. If you're into like the textures and aesthetics of a certain sound. If you're more into like technical playing, probably not gonna like this. But yeah, thanks for sticking around to the end of this review. I'm a music reviewer, and I'll be reviewing more things for you soon. You guys take care of yourselves.